Hi, Joe.
Hello.
So tell us a little bit. Give me your name, where you're from, even your age, if you're so inclined.
Yes, I will. Okay, name is Joe Barnes, originally from New York City. I am 44 years old, and I will be 45 in January. Yeah, yes, I will be 45 in January.
It's official.
It's official. Yes.
All right. And tell me how you came to Compassionate Choices. What was your first awareness of this organization?
Yeah, gosh. I originally, I attended the kickoff, it was a kickoff event, kickoff party, and I had a chance to meet Sid, actually, who I spoke with, and he shared a lot of information with me about Compassionate Choices when I was mixing around in the crowd. Great guy, by the way. And he gave me information I was able to share with my parents. Because my dad is actually dying from stage 4 colon cancer. And he's in New York City. So, my mom helps out. My sister helps out. And my wife helps out when she goes back east. So we all help out, rather. And, so Sid actually talked to me about hospice. And he actually emailed me just a ton of information about Compassionate Choices and hospice and just so many different documents. And before that, I was, I had originally, I think I saw an advertisement about Compassionate Choices for hiring for an organizer, and I was interested in it. But when I came to the mixer and had a chance to meet Sid and meet all of the wonderful supporters um, at the kickoff party, then I was like, that's an organization I could work for because I believe in the mission and the entire purpose of what Compassionate Choices is doing.
What, in your own words, is the mission of Compassionate Choices?
Being that never-ending advocate for people who are dealing with not just excruciating pain, but just dealing with overall life decisions when it comes to making sure they have adequate um, health care, and, or making sure they're not just getting health care that's not doing anything for their health whatsoever, but just being an advocate for people who are suffering from terminal illnesses, who are actually going to be dying, and to make sure that they have a voice when it comes to dying with dignity. We want to make sure that people can have a dignified death.
So you do a lot of outreach, working with volunteers, recruiting volunteers, and talking to the public, getting signatures and petitions and so on. I want you to talk a little bit about that and give me a sense of how do you approach somebody and talk about this very crucial issue.
Yes, I do that so much. Sign our petition. No, I'm just joking. No, but we do that basically on a one-on-one basis. At the farmers markets with volunteers, we always tend to, just stand in the crowd, and as people are walking by, we just basically say, "Hi, good morning. Would you show support by signing our petition?" And they'll say, "What's the petition about?" "Oh, I'm with Compassionate Choices. We've been around for 30 years. We're a nonprofit organization that fights for people who have terminal illnesses, who are mentally competent, and we've launched the Death with Dignity campaign, and we want to make sure that people who have lived a full life can have a dignified death, not sitting in an ICU, suffering in pain, but should have the option to die with dignity at home, surrounded by loved ones and friends. Would you show support and sign our petition?" And people will sign the petition, and then they'll also start sharing their own personal stories from either they had a grandparent or a family member in general that has actually either had a horrible death or just still suffering right now. And then I always ask them, would they be willing to volunteer, or if they say they don't want to volunteer, then I would say to them, is it okay if we just keep you informed of the campaign, and you might want to attend a town hall meeting or a meeting with your local legislator in support. And most people tend to say they wouldn't mind being updated on a regular basis. But it's really just a one-on-one conversation, sharing stories. And I use a lot of times I just share my own personal story as I'm talking to people to let them know why I'm working on the campaign. And then we have volunteers who are supporting the campaign as well.
Have you had a conversation with your dad about the work you're doing, and how does he feel about Death with Dignity?
Yeah, it's funny enough. I haven't really talked to him about the work that I'm doing. I just tend to we just talk about sports, and we talk about just life, and that's that's how we kind of deal with, his final time on Earth. It's like we have a routine that we do, and that routine is, we'll get on Skype and we'll play chess, but we never really finish the game. We just tend to hang out and just talk about everything else that's going on. And, yeah.
So has he articulated his wishes to you, or his end-of-life wishes in general?
Yeah, he's pretty much already made that decision because he used to go for the whole chemo, and the chemo really wasn't doing anything for him. So he finally just pretty much made a decision. He's managing his pain, and they gave him the pills versus the chemo, which doesn't really do anything for him. So he's really at the point now. He's just living his life until those days come when he'll pass away. But it's like he actually looks so much better now than he did when he was doing chemo. When he was doing chemo, he was, physically destroyed. Couldn't even walk. And now, once he had stopped doing chemo, now he can walk around again. And, not for a long time, but he still gets to walk a little bit and have his routine. And he's more coherent, I would say, versus when he was just doing chemo. And it was like 1 week of chemo, you just destroyed. You got to wait till the following week when you didn't have chemo to try to be a little physically active. But I think he's a little lucky right now because it hasn't spread to his brain. But the cancer has spread everywhere else. And a lot of people who have stage 4 colon cancer, if it spreads to your brain, then you start to lose a lot of your motor functions. So, yeah.
So have you talked about that? Like, you know what's coming next, and
Yeah, we do. And pretty much everything's, already been arranged. That's the thing, it's funny when you have a parent that's dying. It's like you have to have those conversations about funeral arrangements. You have to have the best wishes, and so everything is pretty much already done. And what I try to do mostly is I have my son spend more time with my dad than I actually do. So I always fly him back so he can spend time with his grandfather. Yeah.
beautiful.
My dad and I, we have an older school relationship. We're still the ones who we never tell each other we love each other, but we love each other. But my son, I tell my son I love him all the time. And my dad tells my son he loves him all the time. But my dad's a grown man, I'm a grown man, so we always struggle with the whole I love you factor. So we talk about sports. But that's how we address it.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, for sure. My last question for this brief interview is if you could just talk a little bit about the African American community in particular, and your interactions, the responses you've gotten, and also your impression overall of how that community plays a part. If we're going to legalize death with dignity, they got to be on board, and they're traditionally maybe skew a little more conservative.
Yeah, and I think there's also a lot of misconceptions when it comes to the position of a lot of people in the black community. My background itself as a kid was that I used to go to church on a regular basis. When I was a kid, I used to give out tracts with my parents. Tracts about Jesus and everything. I used to walk around and I'd have to help out in the churches and everything. But when it comes to African American community in general, when it comes to health issues, there's a lot of people in African American community who never go to the doctor. So not that they have a fear of the doctor, but it's a history of not going for regular physical checkups, which actually exist. And then when people are diagnosed with terminal illnesses, it's the rush factor to get medications to try to overcome the illness versus coming to terms with the disease. So the transition that has been happening a lot in the African American community is, how do you get people to make sure they have health coverage, they get regular checkups, so they don't have a fear of the doctor, but also know that they can deal with end-of-life decisions in a very dignified way. And I think that is the topic that's going on now in a lot of households, is that someone who's lived their whole life, worked their whole life, they may be diagnosed with terminal illness, they're an African American, they might have had a grandparent who might have had a horrible experience with, whether they're in the South when it came to dealing with physicians, and back in the segregated time, which doesn't really exist now with the relationship with doctors. But I think that it's very beneficial that African American families can be able to be a part of that discussion, that they know that if someone has a terminal illness or there's they should have a right to have a dignified death versus just suffering. And I think that's an important topic that should be spoken about, and I think it is talked about on a lower scale basis because most people are still dealing with the fact of either not having health insurance or just getting health insurance but never really utilizing health insurance, and then they end up either in a nursing home or they end up in a hospice and they're suffering, but they don't know that there's other choices there for them. And I think the religious factor may exist, but to a scale that the human factor outweighs the religious factor when it's talked about. That changes everything.
So, in your opinion, your advice to the movement as a whole, what's the best approach if we want to target the African American community? How would we differ our approach?
I would say the best approach is getting into the churches and getting into the community centers and just saying, hi, we're from Compassionate Choices. We have a 30-year history of working with seniors and people who are facing end-of-life decisions around the country. And we want to make sure the African American community knows that there are options available to them versus getting unnecessary medical treatment, or making sure that African American community can reach out to an organization like us, Compassionate Choices, to learn about end-of-life decisions, whether or not you need to plan out your end of days, making sure that you're communicating with your family, making sure that you know there's someone that's a friend to you that can help you when you have to make those tough decisions. It's important. That's what Compassionate Choices really does. And no one likes to talk about death, but we all know that in life there's only death and taxes. And it's good to have someone that's on your side that's not asking you for taxes, but's more concerned about making sure your dignity is maintained.
Well said. Thank you, Joe.
Sure.